Hi everyone, how everyone online as well. My name is Alexandra Andersson and I work as a data consultant in Sweden. I joined Solita earlier this year and I don't live in Stockholm. I live a bit further up north, as you can see in this picture. And so I work remotely mostly. I've been working with DevOps for the past 3 years. Before that, I also worked with DevOps. I was just not aware there was such a thing as DevOps. I was just looking for a way to focus at one thing at a time, ensuring good quality at my work, and still having something that made sense with what my colleagues were developing. My experience of data visualization is a bit more vague. Most of my experience comes from doing data visualization in financial audit, where I was a data specialist. And to be honest with you, most of my effort back in the days was writing SQL Server code, trying to squeeze in some million rows of transactional data into Excel files, because that would always be the most preferred reporting format. A good thing about working in audit, and IT audit in particular, was that I became very risk aware. Because no matter how fancy the dashboards or the Excel reports that I delivered, the only thing the IT auditors cared about was whether the figures were correct, whether the data was complete and accurate. And the only thing my clients cared about was whether I kept their data secure. So I became very risk aware, as you can also see in this picture. I love doing mountain sports, skiing, biking, running, and those things. And I think all of this experience led me to this beautiful mix of topics that I'll speak about today. Embracing DevOps for secure data visualization. I'll explain why it matters, and I give 2 examples of how I work with that in practice. So the agenda, I'll introduce you to these buzzwords, and I give you examples of version control and testing. So first, some myths about low-code. Low-code can be many different things, but when it comes to data visualization, the main players are Power BI, Tableau, and Qlik. And first thing I hear is that it's only for non-techie people or business people, but just as often I hear that this is only for developers. It's just too complicated. And to be honest with you, I think we can all benefit. And many companies see the benefits of being able to develop things using already created stuff that you can just drag and drop in and that you can further develop with code. So understanding code base is a very good thing when you work with these tools. I also hear that it's more risky than traditional development. And I would say that's not always the case. Because in many cases, the tech layer of security is already handled by the providers. So we still need to care about the people and process part. So that's where I think DevOps comes in handy. To give you a bit more context of my work, I work currently as a Power BI specialist in a Scrum team. So when as a Power BI developer, I have the data and I sit in Power BI desktop and develop. And what I do is that I import part of the data set from an ERP system or multiple systems, and that now lives in my desktop. So keep track of where the data moves around in this picture. When I want to share my reports, I publish them to Power BI service. And what happens then is that 2 items are being created. One is the report, and another one is a copy of the data. Most end users, they use these reports through an app, so they don't have access to all the data, as long as I've set up a proper row-level security. And if I want to do it a bit more advanced, I can add on a test environment where a selected set of users test my solution before I publish it to all of the other users. Here we have the most risky member of the team, which is the workspace member. Because in Azure stack, the member is actually quite a powerful and privileged person who has access to the data. Even if I set up a row-level security, if you are a workspace member, you get access to all data, and you can share that data all over the place. And I don't think that all corporate business people are aware of the risk that comes with that setup. So to be less specific and more general, what are the main threats? In my opinion, you need to know like where your data is stored. And next, you need to know who has access to all those places where the data is stored and what privileges do they have. Once you have those two things put in place, then you can start questioning, is this KPI really showing what I think it is showing? And what about DevOps then? For those of you who don't know, DevOps is a set of practices where you have your software developer team work together with your IT operations. And the aim with having this setup is that you shorten your development cycle and you can ensure better quality of your deliverables. Working with data visualization, I have found most use of version control and testing or quality control. But I've also tried to and started to explore continuous integration, continuous development, trying to automate and put stuff in production without this manual work. But we're not really there yet, unfortunately. And at the moment, I work, as I mentioned, as a Power BI specialist. I'm part of a Scrum team, and we are developing an app where the client, they can keep track of costs in really big infrastructure projects. So in our Scrum team, we have myself as the Power BI specialist. We also have some super users who are the project administrators, and they act as the product owners. And then we also have people from IT. So by having the super users in the team, I know that I develop stuff that matters. By having people from IT operations, they can point on stuff that will enable like smooth operations. And together we can identify like where can things go wrong and how can we prevent those things. So to be a bit more specific now, version control, how do you do this? I wrote down like the evolution of version control of binary files. And binary files is by definition anything that is not a text file. And traditional software development is a text file. And proper version control was made for text files. And I'll go more into detail what's problematic about trying to versioning this. But on a general level, I believe that most companies, they just don't do anything. Version control of when working with Power BI or Tableau, you just have one version in your desktop and then you make changes directly to that version. Next option is to treat this as we do with any type of Word files or documentation. So we just name it in this clever naming convention. And if you combine a good naming convention with a proper changelog, then you actually have quite a powerful way of versioning these files because you can go back to a point in time where things didn't go wrong. The recommended approach, in my opinion, is that you go for a SharePoint, and you have a user group that has access to that SharePoint, and you turn on history, because then you can go back in time to a point before you screw up your file, and your colleagues can go back in time to a point where before you screwed up. The problem with this is that you don't know the difference between the different versions. You need to remember, like, when did I do what, and how can I change that? The approach that I'm trying is to have this file in Git, and I'll explain why that's a good thing and why it's not a good thing. So I put the entire binary file in Git, and I reveal everything here. So the only reason I see to do this is because you consider Power BI to be software, and you want to store all your versioning of software in the same place. Then you can put this file in Git. Another good functionality is that you have a commit message. So I can I have the changelog built into my versions. And that's a very nice, nice thing. I've found very good use for that. The bad thing is that you can't do diffs. So this good way where you can see this was the file before I screwed up and this is the file now, like you can't see the difference between them. You can only see the difference in file size, and that's not really very helpful. And you can do branching, but there's no good way to put your change files, your changes back into your main version. So basically branching is useless. You can just keep, I only use it now to keep track of what is the production version and what am I developing, and then I just have kind of a changelog on the development version. And then when I want to make changes to production, I'll basically just replace that file. Another bad thing that I highlighted here is that since it's not a text file, it's bigger, and it also holds the data. So the copies of data that I showed before, like now you have also your data in Git, and that's not a good thing either. So we're not really there yet. So what are the options for this? In Power BI, you can unpack it, and you can get like a configuration that it actually lives in a text file, which is part of your configuration file. And you can put that one in Git. The problem with that is that there is not a good way then to, like not all configuration lives in that file, and it's not possible to put that back in once you made the changes. So I don't see this as a good option quite yet. The third option is that the tech providers, they realize that people treat this as software. So they have started now to launch new functionalities, but usually these are premium functionalities. So there is such a thing as a deployment pipeline where you can see actually what are the changes between the files. But it's not really available for all of those files. Next example is about testing. And reason we test is that we want to know what if what we are seeing is the truth. And I believe that many companies, they do nothing. They have one individual develop a nice dashboard, and then they just say, oh, it's a nice dashboard, and then they spread it to other people that are equally impressed. And so if you just put in place any type of testing, then you have reached a long way. So like just throw out a version of your report to one user and ask, like, could you just double check these numbers? Is the data complete, for example? Next step would be do some sort of testing scenarios. And just some weeks ago, there was a person that did a presentation at the Data Platform Virtual Summit where he showcased automated testing. And I thought that was great. Like, there was a way to actually do automated testing of the configurations in this file. It was not actual test on the reporting page. It was more like he tested whether the tabular module was correct. So that was pretty interesting, and I recommend you to take a look at that. To wrap things up, how do we put this in practice? First step is don't trust the dashboard, especially if it looks pretty. And the next thing is understand who has access to your data. It's great that data is being spread out in the whole organization, but it's also risky business. Next thing is that I know there are many developers also online and in this crowd. Welcome these like business users to your team and work with them, because you can learn stuff from them and you can teach them stuff as well. So first thing, once they are in your teams, is to teach them how to separate development from test from production. You can win a lot in these types of tools as well. And it's just, for me, it's just quite recently that we have found, I mean, these tools, they were developed to be self-service. So that's the reason why there are not really like good software development tools available for these solutions. But I believe we will see more of them in the future. And the tech providers and other open source providers are also like stepping up the game so that we can do proper testing and version control. So stay up to date with new stuff and embrace DevOps for more secure data visualization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. It was very, very interesting. Let's see if we have some questions, except not doing fancy dashboards.
Exactly.
Okay. It looks like there are still some challenges when it comes to using DevOps for data visualization. Why should we even try DevOps if the support is not yet in place?
So I believe, like anything that we do, there will be challenges with that. And the way that we work with tools and new tools and developing tools, like that always changes. So there will be like, if we start using these practices for these types of tools, then we will see a need for supporting that. And then there will be someone, especially in the open source community, that fills that gap. So I think it's important to like get started somewhere. And what I like about DevOps is that it's like a set of practices, so you don't need to apply them all at once, in my opinion, at least. You can work with only the testing part, and then that will give you benefits.
Yeah, good thoughts. We have another question here. Why not implement data quality and data pipeline audit before building the reports? A bit more challenging, but could be worth of the investment.
So I'm like, that's an interesting thought. In general, I'm a big fan of just getting started and throw things out there and throw things out to like the user as soon as possible. So and that's why usually like I'm aware of governance, but I'm like applying that afterwards, because you need to have the users and have the users want to use these solutions before you can like dare to invest in those types of more sophisticated ways of working. So like if you have the money, then go ahead. If not, like find some users first.
Yeah, I think it's probably depends on the project and what is in place already and in what stage you come in.
Yes, indeed.
I don't think we have any more questions. So if anybody here or online has, we do still have some time for questions. You could use the app. Otherwise, everyone is busy.
More time for drinking beer afterwards.
Everyone is busy, maybe Solita quizzling instead.
Exactly.
In that case...
Oh, I think we have a question here.
No, write it in the chat. You have the QR code on.
We take a
yeah, we have a chat time,
afterwards.
so we will wait for the question. We hope it's a good one. No pressure. Yeah.
So,
yes.
What's your favorite like visualization tool? Like, is there differences? What is easier to automate, Tableau versus Power BI or something else?
Okay, so I know that you've heard, but our online audience hasn't. So what is the difference between the different tools, visualization tools, like Tableau and other tools, Power BI, and is any of these tools easier to automate?
So I have, your presentation was heavily like Azure sided, and I would say like I have most experience working with Power BI. So I can't give my opinion in that. I think there are like, coming from like the Microsoft stuff, like that they themselves develop is not as sophisticated yet, but there are like good other tools that you can use to facilitate your life. So, but I've spoken to colleagues working with Tableau, and they face the same struggles when they tried similar things. So
I actually worked with Tableau before, yeah. But usually we say within data visualization that there is no tool that does it all, unfortunately.
No, exactly. And then you can do visualization with like, I don't know, writing Python scripts or some other, but it's then you don't have the benefits of flow coding. Like, so it's It's a trade, always.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alexandra. It was very interesting.
Thank you.